The discovery of North Sea Man has sparked a mystery that spans 30 years and 14,000 nautical miles, in a case that has puzzled investigators worldwide. It was in July 1994 that a German border patrol boat caught sight of a body floating in the water near the coast of a small archipelago called Heligoland in the North Sea. The two islands of Heligoland are part of the German state of Schleswig-Holstein and lie 46 kilometres off the coastline. In retrieving the waterlogged figure from the ocean, the crew observed indications of trauma around the deceased man's head and upper body. They found that a pair of heavy cast iron lasts, which are known as cobbler's shoes, had been used to weigh him down. Indicating these obvious signs of foul play at first glance, the mystery man was transported back to Wilhelmshaven on the German mainland for post-mortem examination. There, pathologists were intrigued by his genteel attire, a pale blue dress shirt worn with a distinctive woolen, green, grey and orange diagonally striped tie, navy French-made trousers and a pair of leather British-made formal shoes. The unknown man was assessed as having died 4 months before his discovery. The German authorities arranged for him to be buried, his identity a mystery. The discovery of the floating decedent hit headlines across Europe, which at that stage dubbed him the Gentleman of Heligoland, as police searched extensively for any clues identifying the dapper, probable murder victim. Since then, despite decades of investigative efforts and public appeals, the man's name and origin remain a mystery. The little known about the well-dressed man pulled from the North Sea includes that he was unusually tall, between 188 and 198 centimetres, and slim, weighing about 11 or 12 stone. He is estimated as having been aged between 45 and 50 years old at the time that he was assumed to have met with a violent end. His body showed unmistakable signs of trauma, having received blows to the head and ribs. Because these deliberate injuries had been inflicted while he was still alive, coupled with the suspicious weighing down of his body with the cobbler's tools, his case was assigned to homicide police in Germany for investigation. Although the body was retrieved from the water 20 kilometres off the coast of Heligoland, it may have drifted a long distance from a different location before its sighting by the German patrol boat, either thrown off a ship near Heligoland or originating from the islands and then moved out to sea. Although initially dubbed the Gentleman, investigators who initially thought the man may have been some kind of high society figure have concluded that his middle-class attire was nothing out of the ordinary. Initially, the striped woolen tie he was wearing was assumed to link him to some kind of exclusive club, military or a private school. However, it was eventually found to be a mass-produced item from the British retailer Marks & Spencer, which had been distributed to English, French and Canadian markets. Police dispelled the notion that the man was wealthy by also declaring that the shoes had been repaired and were possibly second-hand. Despite initial major publicity throughout Europe about the tragic case, as well as public appeals, followed by decades of investigative work, North Sea Man's identity and reasons behind his horrific demise remain a mystery. Investigators have continued to slowly piece together the man's data over the years. The iron tools used to weigh him down were only recently disclosed to the public by police. There came a glimmer of hope when, 30 years down the track, a major breakthrough in the investigation was made when it was examined by the International Cold Case Analysis Project. The project links together experts working within universities and law enforcement agencies throughout the world to take a fresh viewpoint in examining cold cases that are thought able to be solved. In the hope that new genetic mapping techniques could be applied to finally solve this case, the project successfully pushed for the North Sea man's body to be exhumed in December 2021. 3 months after that, police released a photo fit and new information about the deceased as part of a public appeal by the media to identify him. Police believe the man probably went missing sometime between the end of 1993 and the first 6 months of 1994, so called on the public to think back to that time. Researchers were able to collect some new DNA samples for more advanced analysis, as well as conduct a study of the stable isotopes within the man's bones. The principle involved in this level of investigation follows the scientific truism that you are what you eat. Stable isotope analysis can drill down to discover where someone has lived by studying the presence of elements like carbon and hydrogen in their bones and teeth, which results from the food they have consumed. Differences in climate, soil, and human lifestyle and activities across the globe change the isotopic compositions of food, water, and even dust. These differences are in turn reflected in the isotopic variations within the human tissue. On performing an isotope ratio analysis of the North Sea man's bones, scientists made a surprising discovery. The analysis strongly indicated that the North Sea man had spent a long period of his life in Australia. Strangely, the investigation that began as a German concern swung back to Australia, where university students, scientists, and law enforcement agencies combine perspectives and share findings. The Cold Case Review team at Murdoch University in Perth, Australia, was one of the handful of research agencies already working on the case of the North Sea man. Its co-director Brendan Chapman expressed astonishment at the team now finding itself at the hub of the inquiry in the very country from where the man originated, as police had previously focused their inquiries around Europe. News of the North Sea man's link to a continent on the other side of the world was made public in 2022 and triggered a string of fresh tip-offs about his possible identity. The British charity Locate International provided a link by collecting the new data and distributing it to German and UK police. In Australia, a national DNA program for unidentified and missing persons was launched in 2020 and in the first 4 years it was operating has helped to solve 19 cases. Its approach involves scouring DNA databases linked with commercial family heritage companies such as GEDmatch to try and establish a DNA link to unidentified bodies. The North Sea man was uncovered in very strange and unexplained circumstances, however is considered a very solvable case. He would now be around 80 years of age, so investigators do have a sense of urgency as to identifying surviving relatives. Locate International has appealed to any members of the public who may have information about the mystery man. They ask, did you know someone at school or university, perhaps in the 50s or 60s, who was unusually tall, whom you may have been in contact with, but not anymore? All investigators involved believe the case can be solved. The question is merely whether the breakthrough will come from the slow slog of tip-offs or DNA science. Regardless of the unfortunate man's country of origin, there is one fact beyond doubt. Long before he ended his days floating alone in a cold ocean, the North Sea man would have had family and people who knew him. It's essential to its core that the search for his identity is a personal rather than scientific quest. Locate International approach the mystery from a very human point of view. The way volunteer Roland Hughes sees it is that, at the end of the day, this is a person who died in strange circumstances, but has not been afforded the dignity of having been buried with his name. He believes it is their job to give him back that dignity. In addition, if there's a family out there who are also wanting answers, then they feel a duty to provide those. It may be 30 years on, but for them it's still not too late.